My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago I experienced something that would change my relationship with my family forever. It happened at my parents' annual Christmas dinner, the kind of elaborate celebration my mother spends weeks planning, the kind where everything has to be perfect, where appearances matter more than anything else. The dining room was decorated exactly how you'd imagine an upper-middle-class Boston family would do it. White tablecloth with gold runners, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier. Centerpieces made of winter greens and white roses that probably cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month, and surrounding that table were 18 people. My parents, David and Linda Chen, my older brother Marcus and his wife Jennifer, Uncle Robert and Aunt Susan, cousin David and his fiancée. The whole extended Chen family, all dressed in their holiday finest, everyone laughing and drinking wine and passing plates of glazed ham and roasted vegetables and my mother's famous twice-baked potatoes. It was picture perfect, at least from the outside. I was sitting near the end of the table, the spot I always seem to end up in at family gatherings. Not quite at the kids' table anymore, but definitely not in the inner circle where my parents and brother sat. I was wearing a simple black dress, nothing fancy, because I'd learned years ago not to try too hard at these things. My brother Marcus sat at my father's right hand, literally, wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost $3,000. His wife Jennifer sat beside him in head-to-toe designer wear, her hair professionally styled, her makeup flawless. Then my father stood up, tapping his wine glass with a fork. The conversation died down. Everyone turned to look at him with those expectant smiles people get when they know something good is coming. "To family," he said, raising his wine glass high. "And to Marcus, who just made partner at Goldman Sachs at only 34 years old. Son, we are so incredibly proud of you. What you've accomplished, the dedication you've shown, it's exactly what we always knew you were capable of." The room erupted in applause. Real applause, not polite golf claps. My mother was beaming, actually beaming with pride, her eyes shining with tears. Marcus nodded humbly, doing that thing he does where he ducks his head and smiles like he's embarrassed, but you can tell he's eating up every second of it. Jennifer squeezed his hand and looked at him like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. "And to Jennifer," my mother added, standing up to join my father, "for that absolutely beautiful article in Architectural Digest about their Tribeca penthouse renovation. 42 pages in the spring issue. Our daughter-in-law, featured in Architectural Digest. Can you believe it?" More applause, more praise. Jennifer did a little mock bow, and everyone laughed like it was the most charming thing they'd ever seen. I smiled. I raised my glass along with everyone else. I was genuinely happy for them. I was. Marcus had worked hard for that partnership. The recognition was deserved. But sitting there, watching my parents glow with pride, watching the family celebrate my brother's success, I felt that familiar hollow feeling in my chest, the one I'd been feeling at family gatherings for years. Then my Uncle Robert, who was sitting directly across from me, and was definitely at least 3 glasses of wine deep based on the flush in his cheeks, turned his attention to me. "So Sarah," he said, his words just slightly slurred at the edges. "You still doing that? What is it? Computer thing? The freelance stuff from your apartment?" The table got quieter. Not silent, but quieter. People were still talking, but I could feel the attention shifting in my direction. "I'm a software engineer," I said, keeping my voice level and professional. "I run my own tech consulting business. I specialize in AI integration and cybersecurity solutions for enterprise-level clients." "Right, right," Uncle Robert said, waving his hand dismissively like he was swatting away a fly. "Working from home in your pajamas. Must be nice not having a real job. No commute, no boss, just you and your laptop. Living the dream, huh?" A few people laughed. Nervous laughter, the kind that happens when someone says something uncomfortable but people aren't sure if they're supposed to find it funny or not. Cousin David chuckled. Jennifer smirked into her wine glass. Aunt Susan looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. "Actually," I started to say, "I have clients across 3 continents and I employ a team of contractors. I travel frequently for in-person consultations and I speak at industry conferences. It's not exactly working in my pajamas." But my father cut me off before I could finish. "Sarah's still figuring things out," he said, and his tone, God, his tone was so apologetic, like he was making excuses to the family for having a defective daughter. Not everyone can be a high achiever like Marcus. Some people need more time to find their path. Sarah's always been more of a late bloomer. 18 pairs of eyes. That's how many people were looking at me in that moment. Some with pity in their expressions, like I was a wounded animal. Some with amusement, like I was entertainment. Some just uncomfortable, looking down at their plates because they didn't know where else to look. My mother leaned forward, and what she did next was worse than anything Uncle Robert had said. She stage whispered, the kind of loud whisper that's designed to be heard by everyone at the table. We keep telling her to get a real job at a real company with benefits and a 401k, she said, something stable. But she insists on this freelance hobby. We worry about her future constantly. We really do. Hobby. That word hung in the air like a physical thing. My mother called my business, my 6-year-old business that generated over $800,000 in revenue last year alone, a hobby. Like I was collecting stamps or doing scrapbooking on the weekends. I set my fork down very carefully because my hands had started to shake, and I didn't trust myself to hold it steady. But here's what they didn't know. What none of them knew. What I'd been keeping secret for exactly 2 months and 13 days. I owned a house. Not an apartment. Not a condo. A house. A 6,200 square foot modern architectural masterpiece in the Hollywood Hills, with 5 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, and an infinity pool that overlooked the canyon and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much light it felt like living inside a piece of art. Smart home technology throughout. Custom Italian kitchen, primary suite with a spa bathroom that had a soaking tub and a shower with 6 different shower heads. Views that stretched all the way to downtown Los Angeles on clear days. Purchase price $5.2 million. Not financed, not mortgaged, paid in cash from the proceeds of my hobby. And sitting there at that Christmas dinner table while my family, my own blood relatives, mocked my computer thing and worried about my future and compared me unfavorably to my brother, who did everything the traditional way, the safe way, the way our parents wanted, I made a decision. It was time. Time to stop being modest. Time to stop flying under the radar. Time to show them exactly what my freelance hobby had built. But before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever been the family member they underestimated, if you've ever been dismissed or overlooked or treated like you weren't good enough, hit that like button right now. And subscribe to this channel because what I did next, the way I revealed the truth to my family, it changed everything. Not just for me, but for how they saw success, how they measured worth, how they treated people who chose unconventional paths. Drop a comment and tell me. Have you ever been treated like a failure by people who had no idea what you were actually accomplishing? Have you ever wanted to prove someone wrong so badly you could taste it? Because I'm about to tell you exactly how I did that. Now, to understand why that Christmas dinner was the final straw, why it was the moment that broke something inside me that had been cracking for years, let me take you back to the beginning. Let me show you what it was really like being the other Chen child. The one who didn't go to Harvard. The one who didn't get an MBA from Wharton. The one who chose a state school on a full scholarship because I didn't want my parents to pay, and then chose to start my own business instead of climbing someone else's corporate ladder. The Chen family dynamics weren't always this toxic, or maybe they were, and I was just too young, too hopeful, too desperate for approval to see it clearly. Maybe I'd been invisible for so long I'd started to believe I deserved to be. But that night, something shifted. That night, I stopped being the daughter who needed their approval and became the woman who was about to teach them a very expensive lesson about assumptions. Let me paint you a picture of what being the other Chen child really looked like. Let me show you the pattern that had been building for years, the slow accumulation of dismissals and comparisons that finally led to that Christmas dinner explosion. The Chen family lives in an upscale suburb of Boston called Wellesley. If you know the area, you know what that means. Old money, new money, all the money. My father, David Chen, is a retired cardiovascular surgeon who spent 30 years at Massachusetts General Hospital. My mother, Linda, was a hospital administrator at the same institution before she retired 5 years ago. They live in a 4-bedroom colonial brick house with white shutters and a circular driveway, the kind of house that whispers old establishment wealth, even though my parents were first-generation immigrants who built everything from nothing. In that circular driveway, right in front where everyone can see it when they pull up. That's where Marcus parks his Tesla Model S. Midnight silver, custom interior, the works. My 2015 Honda Accord, the one I bought used with my own money 7 years ago and have maintained meticulously because I believe in taking care of things, that gets tucked around the side of the house, out of sight, like something embarrassing the family doesn't want visitors to see. That parking arrangement tells you everything you need to know about the family dynamics. Marcus is 34, 5 years older than me. Harvard undergraduate degree in economics, Wharton, MBA. Now a partner at Goldman Sachs managing a $400 million portfolio. He married Jennifer Wu, whose father owns a chain of luxury hotels across Asia. I'm talking real luxury. Five-star properties in Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, Bangkok. Jennifer herself has never worked a day in her life, which is fine, that's her choice. But she carries herself like her husband's career, and her father's money make her an authority on success. They have one child, a 4-year-old daughter named Lily, who attends a $45,000 per year private preschool in Manhattan. $45,000 for preschool. Let that sink in. That's more than the median American household income, spent on teaching a 4-year-old her colors. Then there's me. Sarah Chen, the daughter who went to UMass Amherst instead of an Ivy League school, even though I got into Cornell and Brown, because I received a full academic scholarship, and I didn't want my parents to pay tuition when I could get the same quality education for free. The daughter who studied computer science when my father had his heart set on me going to medical school like he did. The daughter who got offered a 6-figure starting position at Microsoft's Seattle headquarters right out of college and turned it down to start my own consulting business from a 1-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. I can still remember the phone call when I told my parents about the Microsoft decision. "Why would you throw away a stable career?" my mother had asked, and she was genuinely confused, genuinely baffled that anyone would turn down a big-name company with health insurance and a 401k and all the trappings of traditional success. "I want to build something of my own," I'd said. "I want to take this skill set I've developed and create something that's mine, not just be a cog in someone else's machine." "You sound like a child," my father had replied, his voice cold with disappointment. "This is what happens when you don't get proper guidance. This is what happens when you think you know better than people who have actually lived life." From that moment on, every family gathering became a reminder of my poor choices. Every holiday, every birthday, every celebration became an opportunity for my family to compare me to Marcus and find me wanting. Let me give you some specific examples so you understand just how deep this pattern ran. Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I arrived at my parents' house at 10 in the morning to help my mother cook. I was wearing jeans and a comfortable sweater because I knew I'd be spending hours in the kitchen. Marcus and Jennifer didn't arrive until 2 in the afternoon, rolling up in their Tesla, both of them dressed in designer clothes, Jennifer in head-to-toe Burberry, Marcus in a cashmere sweater that probably cost $800. They'd just come from brunch at some exclusive restaurant in Back Bay, one of those places where you need a reservation 3 months in advance and they don't list prices on the menu. "Everyone come meet in the living room," my mother called out the second they walked in. "Marcus has news. Big news." We all gathered. Extended family, neighbors who'd been invited, everyone. And Marcus announced that he and Jennifer had just closed on a $3.2 million penthouse in Tribeca. 3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Hudson River, a private terrace, the whole package. Everyone gasped. Actually gasped out loud like they were watching a marriage proposal. My mother burst into tears, happy tears, and hugged Marcus so tight I thought she might crack his ribs. My father shook his hand and clapped him on the back and said, "I'm so proud of you, son, you've really made it." Then Aunt Susan, trying to be polite, trying to include me, turned and asked, "What about you, Sarah? Any big news?" And I said, "Yes, actually. I just signed my biggest client, a Fortune 500 company. It's a $200,000 contract for a comprehensive cybersecurity audit and AI integration system. It's the largest deal I've ever closed, and it came from a referral, which means my reputation in the industry is really building." "That's nice, dear," my mother said, barely even looking at me, already turning back to Marcus. "Now tell us more about the penthouse. How many square feet is it? What floor are you on? Did you get parking included?" My $200,000 contract, the biggest achievement of my career at that point, something I'd worked 18 months to land, dismissed in 3 words. That's nice, dear. Or take last Easter. I drove up from Los Angeles, a 6-hour flight, and went straight to my parents' house to help prepare for the family dinner. I spent 6 hours in that kitchen making side dishes, setting the table with my mother's good china, arranging flowers, making sure everything was perfect. My back was aching, my feet hurt. I smelled like the green bean casserole I'd been making. Jennifer showed up at 4:30, 30 minutes before dinner was supposed to be served, carrying a store-bought chocolate cake from Whole Foods, and my mother practically threw her arms around her and said, "Oh, Jennifer, you're so thoughtful. You didn't have to bring anything. You're so busy with little Lily. You're such a good mother to think of us." At dinner, when I mentioned that I'd been working 80-hour weeks for the past month, launching a new service platform that was going to expand my business into the European market, my father said, "Well, that's the problem with not having a stable job, Sarah. There's no work-life balance. You're going to burn yourself out." Marcus worked 80-hour weeks too. I knew he did because he talked about it constantly. But when Marcus did it, it was called dedication and ambition and commitment to excellence. When I did it, it was evidence that I didn't have a real job with proper boundaries. Last summer was maybe the worst example. My parents threw a garden party for 40 people to celebrate Marcus making partner at Goldman Sachs. They rented a tent for the backyard. They hired caterers. They had an open bar. They hung a banner across the patio that said "Congratulations, Marcus" in big gold letters. It was like a wedding reception, but for a job promotion. The same month, literally the same month, I launched my AI consulting division, something I'd been building toward for 2 years. It required hiring 3 new contractors, developing proprietary software, establishing partnerships with 2 major tech firms. That launch tripled my annual revenue. Tripled it. I went from making good money to making the kind of money that puts you in the top 1% of earners in the United States. I got a text from my mother. "That's great, sweetie," it said. "Don't forget Marcus's party is next Saturday at 2. Can you come early to help set up?" Not "congratulations," not "we're proud of you," not "tell us more about this exciting development," just a reminder to show up early to celebrate my brother. Do you want to know when I realized the truth? When the pattern finally became so clear I couldn't ignore it anymore? It hit me on a random Tuesday evening, about 4 months before that Christmas dinner. I was sitting in my modest apartment in Silver Lake, the same 1 bedroom I'd been renting for 6 years, because I was putting all my extra income into savings and investments instead of upgrading my lifestyle. I was on a video call with my third Fortune 500 client of the year, negotiating the terms of a $350,000 contract for a year-long consulting engagement. $350,000 for 1 year of my time and expertise. After I hung up, after we'd agreed on terms, and they said they'd have their legal team send over the contracts, I just sat there, in the silence of my small apartment, and I thought I just made in 1 phone call what many people make in 5 or 6 years of working full-time. I just negotiated a deal that most people would consider life-changing money. And my family thinks I'm unemployed. That's when it started. The plan. The idea that would eventually lead to that Christmas dinner revelation. You see, I'd been saving aggressively for 4 years at that point, living well below my means despite my growing income, still driving my 2015 Honda Accord, still buying my clothes from Target and TJ Maxx. Still living in that modest apartment with the weird kitchen layout and the bathroom tiles from 1987. My parents saw all of this as evidence that I was struggling, that my business wasn't really successful, that their fears about my poor career choices were justified. The truth was, I was building a war chest. I had been consulting with a real estate investment advisor for 18 months, looking at properties, running numbers, learning about the Los Angeles luxury real estate market, waiting for the right opportunity, the perfect moment, to make a move that would be undeniable. And then 3 months before that Christmas dinner, my advisor sent me a listing that made my heart stop. $5.2 million architectural masterpiece in the Hollywood Hills, 6,200 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, an infinity pool that seemed to float over the canyon, floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the whole house into a piece of art, smart home technology throughout, chef's kitchen with custom Italian cabinetry, primary suite with a spa bathroom, views that stretched from downtown Los Angeles all the way to the Pacific Ocean on clear days. The kind of house that gets featured in Architectural Digest and Dwell magazine. The kind of house that screams I made it louder than any words ever could. The seller was motivated. A tech executive who'd gotten a job offer in Singapore and needed to relocate fast. He wanted a quick, clean, all-cash deal. No contingencies, no financing delays, just a straightforward transaction. I could do all cash. The numbers worked. My business was generating consistent seven-figure annual revenue. I had $3.8 million in liquid assets sitting in high-yield savings and money market accounts. I had another $2 million in investment accounts, index funds, and tech stocks that had performed well. At 29 years old, I could buy this house outright and still have operating capital for my business. I could do it without a mortgage, without debt, without financial strain. But I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not Marcus, not even my closest friends. I worked with a lawyer to set up an LLC for privacy. I went through inspections and escrow in complete secrecy, using my business address for all correspondence. The day I got the keys, October 15th, 2 months before that Christmas dinner, I drove up to the house alone. I stood in the massive living room with its 20-foot ceilings and panoramic views of Los Angeles. The city spread out below me like a glittering promise, and I cried. Not because of the house, though it was beautiful. I cried because for the first time in my life I had physical, undeniable proof that I wasn't the family disappointment. I was actually the most successful one. The daughter they'd dismissed and compared unfavorably to Marcus for years had just bought a house worth more than his Tribeca penthouse, and I'd done it with cash while he had a 30-year mortgage. But nobody knew. I kept living in my modest apartment, kept driving my Honda Accord, kept showing up to family events where people asked if I'd found a real job yet. I was waiting, planning, preparing for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. And then came Christmas dinner. If you're still watching, I want to ask you something, and I really want you to answer in the comments. Have you ever been so underestimated by your own family that you kept your success secret just to see how far they'd go? Have you ever wanted to prove everyone wrong so badly that you planned the perfect moment of revelation? Tell me in the comments what your family underestimates about you. What do they not see? What are you building in secret while they judge you? And if this story is hitting close to home, if you've ever been the family disappointment who was actually succeeding beyond everyone's imagination, make sure you're subscribed because what happened when I finally told them the truth, the looks on their faces, the complete shock and disbelief, it was worth every second of planning. This brings us back to Christmas dinner. But now you know the full context. Now you understand what was really at stake. Now you can see why what happened next wasn't just about proving a point. It was about finally, after years of being dismissed and diminished, demanding to be seen for who I actually was. After my mother called my business a hobby in front of 18 people, after my father apologized to the extended family for my lack of ambition like I was some kind of embarrassment he had to explain away, dinner continued. The ham was passed around. People complimented my mother's cooking. Conversations resumed about Marcus's partnership and Jennifer's Architectural Digest feature, and how wonderful everything was for everyone except me. I sat there with my fork in my hand, smiling politely the way I'd learned to smile at these gatherings, the way you smile when you're trying not to show that something inside you is breaking. But this time, instead of breaking, something crystallized. Something hardened into absolute clarity. Enough. That's the word that kept echoing in my head. Enough. My Uncle Robert, emboldened by wine and encouraged by the family's laughter at my expense, kept going. He was on a roll now, playing to his audience. "You know what Sarah needs," he said, gesturing at me with his wineglass. "A husband with a real job to take care of her. A doctor, maybe, or a lawyer. Someone stable. Since this computer hobby clearly isn't working out." More laughter rippled around the table. Cousin David actually slapped the table like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all year. Marcus, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. "Come on, Uncle Robert, that's not," he started to say, but Robert cut him off. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Robert interrupted, looking around the table for validation. The girl's almost 30 years old. No real career, no husband, no kids. Living in some tiny apartment in Los Angeles, doing God knows what on her laptop all day. At some point, you have to face reality. My mother sighed, a long-suffering sigh that suggested she'd been carrying this burden for years. "We've tried to help her," she said to the table at large, Like I wasn't sitting right there. We've sent her job listings. I even called my friend Catherine at Mass General to see if they needed IT people. But Sarah insists on being, she paused, searching for the word, independent. She said the word like it was a character flaw, like it was something shameful. Independent doesn't pay the bills, my father added, shaking his head with that disappointed look I'd seen so many times. I just hope she's saving something for retirement because at this rate, the way she's living, she's going to end up with nothing. I'm fine, I said quietly, still holding my fork, still smiling that polite smile. I'm doing better than fine, actually. Of course you are, dear, my mother said in that patronizing tone that made my skin crawl. We're not criticizing you. We're just concerned. We worry about you. Jennifer, Marcus's wife, who had contributed exactly nothing to this family except marrying into it and producing one grandchild, decided this was her moment to offer wisdom. You know, Sarah, she said, tilting her head with fake sympathy. If you ever need help with your resume, I have connections at several tech companies in New York. Real companies with real benefits. Health insurance. 401k matching. Job security. I'd be happy to make some introductions. I set down my fork very carefully because I didn't trust what I might do with it if I kept holding it. I don't need help with my resume, I said. Pride comes before a fall, my father said, using that quotation voice he uses when he thinks he's being wise. This is exactly why you should have gone to medical school like I wanted. You'd have stability now, respect, a clear path forward. I looked around the table at these people, my family, and I saw it clearly. The pity in Aunt Susan's eyes, the amusement in Cousin David's smirk, the disappointment etched into my mother's face. Even Marcus's concern wasn't the kind that comes with respect. It was the kind of concern you have when you're watching someone make terrible choices and you can't stop them. After dinner, I ended up in the kitchen doing cleanup. Just me, of course. Jennifer was in the living room holding court, showing everyone photos from their recent vacation to the Maldives on her phone. I could hear her voice carrying through the house talking about the private villa they'd rented, the personal butler, the underwater restaurant. My mother came into the kitchen carrying a stack of plates. She set them by the sink where I was already washing dishes, and turned to me with that serious expression that meant she had something important to say. Sarah, your father and I want to talk to you tomorrow before you fly back to Los Angeles. About your situation. My situation, I repeated, my hands still in the soapy water. This can't go on forever, sweetheart. You're almost 30 years old. No clear career trajectory. No relationship. No stability. Your father and I have been discussing it and we think it might be time for you to move back home. Just temporarily. Just until you get on your feet. You could take some time to figure out what you really want to do with your life. Maybe go back to school. Maybe get some certifications that would help you land a proper job. I stood there at that sink, my hands dripping soap onto the floor, and I felt something inside me snap into place. I was making $850,000 a year, and my mother wanted me to move into my childhood bedroom so I could figure out my life. That's when I decided, not tomorrow, not next month, not at some vague future family gathering. Soon, very soon, I was going to show them exactly who I was and what I'd built while they were busy dismissing me. But I had to be strategic about it. I couldn't just tell them. They wouldn't believe me. Numbers on paper wouldn't be enough. I needed something undeniable, something they couldn't explain away or minimize. I spent the week between Christmas and New Year's back in Los Angeles working with my real estate lawyer and with my publicist Amanda. Yes, I had a publicist. I'd hired her 6 months earlier as part of expanding my business's visibility in the industry. I'd been avoiding press opportunities because I valued my privacy and I didn't need the attention. But now that privacy was working against me, Amanda had been wanting to pitch my story for months. Sarah, she'd said repeatedly, self-made millennial tech entrepreneur buys $5 million Hollywood Hills mansion at 29 years old. This is exactly the kind of success story that Architectural Digest wants to feature. Forbes would kill for this interview. You're the demographic darling right now. Young, female, tech industry, completely self-made. Let me pitch you. And every time I'd said no, I didn't need the validation. I didn't want the attention. But now, sitting in my living room with its 20-foot ceilings and canyon views, I called Amanda and said, do it. Pitch the story. Architectural Digest, Forbes, whoever wants it. But I want to control the timing. We scheduled the Architectural Digest photo shoot for mid-January. The Forbes interview would run the same week. Amanda also reached out to TechCrunch about profiling my business. They'd been trying to interview me for over a year about my AI consulting platform. Then I planned the reveal itself. The moment that would change everything. I called my parents on January 3rd. Mom, Dad, I said when they both got on the line, I want to invite the family over for dinner, at my place, next Saturday. There was a long silence on the line. Your apartment, my mother finally asked carefully, like she was trying to be diplomatic about my living situation. Sarah, that's sweet, but your place is so small, and with Marcus and Jennifer and Lily and all the aunts and uncles, I don't think everyone would fit. Not my apartment, I said. My house. My new house. I moved. You moved? My mother's voice went up an octave. When? Where? Sarah, please tell me you didn't sign some terrible lease you can't afford. Please tell me you didn't let some landlord take advantage of you. It's not a lease, I said calmly. I bought it. Just come to dinner next Saturday. I'll send you the address. And I hung up before she could ask any more questions. Over the next week, I could feel my mother's panic through her increasingly frantic text messages that lit up my phone at all hours. Sarah, we need details about this house. How much is your mortgage? Did you use a predatory lender? Your father is very worried about your financial decisions. Please call us. We're concerned you've made a terrible mistake. I didn't respond to any of them. I let them worry. I let them imagine the worst. Instead, I worked with a catering company to plan a dinner party for 20 people. The same 18 family members who'd been at Christmas, plus Amanda, my publicist, and my business partner Marcus, different Marcus, who'd been asking to meet my family for years. I had the house professionally styled, fresh flowers in every room, the lighting adjusted to perfection. I even printed out copies of some of my recent business contracts and financial statements, all properly redacted for client privacy, but showing the numbers that mattered. I wasn't planning to show them unless I had to, but I wanted the evidence ready. And I waited. January 10th arrived, the day of the dinner party, the day everything would change. At 5 in the afternoon, I stood on my cantilevered balcony overlooking the canyon, watching the sun begin its descent over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. And I thought about that Christmas dinner, the laughter at my expense, the casual dismissal of everything I'd built, the pity in their eyes. Tonight that would end. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my brother. Sarah, what's the address? Mom is absolutely freaking out. She thinks you bought a house in a dangerous neighborhood. She's convinced you're going to get robbed. I sent him the address. 2847 Canyon Heights Drive, Hollywood Hills. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Marcus calling. Sarah, he said when I answered. I just looked up this address on Google Maps. Is this a joke? Are you pranking us? No joke, I said. Dinner's at 6. Don't be late. If you've made it this far in the story, I want to ask you something, and I really want you to answer honestly in the comments. Have you ever planned the perfect moment to prove everyone wrong? Have you ever held on to a secret success just waiting for exactly the right time to reveal the truth? Tell me, what would you do in this situation? Would you have told them earlier? Or would you have done exactly what I did and waited for maximum impact? And if you want to see what happened when my family walked into my $5.2 million house, when they saw with their own eyes what my computer hobby had actually built, you need to make sure you're subscribed to this channel right now, because what happened next, the looks on their faces, the absolute shock, I only wish I had recorded every second of it. At 5:45 in the evening, my Ring doorbell camera showed the first car pulling into the driveway. My parents' silver Mercedes S-Class, the one my father bought when he retired, the one he's so proud of. I was watching the live feed on my phone from inside the house, standing in the living room with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. They parked in the circular driveway right in front of the main entrance, and then they just sat there. For a full minute, they didn't move. I watched my father in the driver's seat looking up at the house through the windshield, then down at his phone, then back at the house like he was trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what the GPS was telling him. Finally, he got out slowly, carefully, the way you move when you're not sure if what you're experiencing is real. He walked around to the address plaque mounted on the stone pillar by the driveway, the one that says 2847 in brushed steel numbers. He checked his phone again, looked at the house, looked at the address. His face was a mixture of confusion and something else I couldn't quite read. My mother emerged from the passenger side and her face was completely pale, all the color drained out of it like she'd seen a ghost. She grabbed my father's arm with both hands, and I watched her mouth moving. I couldn't hear what she was saying through the camera, but I could read her lips clearly. This can't be right. This can't be right. The doorbell rang, the chime echoing through the 20-foot ceilings of the entry foyer. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, a simple but elegant navy blue sheath that had cost more than my entire wardrobe used to cost, but looked understated enough not to seem like I was trying too hard, and I walked to the front door. I opened it myself even though I'd hired staff for the evening. This moment needed to be personal. Mom. Dad. Come in. They stood frozen in the doorway like they'd hit an invisible wall. The entry foyer is designed to make an impact, 24-foot ceilings. A floating staircase made of white oak treads and steel cables that seems to defy gravity. A custom chandelier I'd commissioned from a local artist, a sculptural piece of blown glass and brass that catches the light and throws rainbow patterns across the walls. And through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls that make up the back of the house, you can see straight through to the canyon view beyond, the hills rolling away into the distance, the city spread out below. Sarah, my father finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. What is this? Whose house is this? This is my house, I said simply, stepping back to let them enter. Come in. I'll give you the tour. They stepped inside like they were entering a museum, like they were afraid to touch anything, their eyes trying to take in everything at once, and failing because there was too much to process. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father just kept shaking his head in small movements like he was trying to clear it. Behind them, another car pulled up, Uncle Robert's BMW. I watched through the still open door as he parked next to my parents' Mercedes and got out with Aunt Susan. I heard his voice carry across the driveway, loud and incredulous. Holy shit, he said. And I'll admit hearing my uncle who'd mocked my computer thing say that gave me a savage little spark of satisfaction. Is this the right address? This is insane. Over the next 15 minutes, the rest of the family arrived in a steady stream. Marcus and Jennifer in their Tesla, cousin David and his fiancée in a rented car because they'd flown in from Chicago, more aunts and uncles. Every single one of them had the exact same reaction when they walked through that front door. Shock. Complete and total shock. Mouths literally hanging open. Eyes going wide. That stunned silence that comes when your brain can't process what you're seeing. Jennifer, who'd been so condescending about my apartment lifestyle at Christmas, who'd offered to help me fix my resume so I could get a real job with benefits, actually gasped out loud when she walked into the foyer. Her hand went to her chest like she was having trouble breathing. This is, she started to say, looking around wildly. This house is, she couldn't even finish the sentence. Mine, I finished for her with a smile. Can I get you something to drink? I have champagne chilling. Veuve Clicquot, the good stuff. The family gradually gathered in the main living area, following me like confused ducklings. It's an open concept space, 600 square feet of living and dining area with 20-foot ceilings and a modern linear fireplace that runs along one wall, floor-to-ceiling windows that showcase those panoramic canyon views. The furniture I'd chosen was a careful mix of mid-century modern and contemporary pieces, a sectional sofa in cream linen, walnut side tables with brass inlays, abstract art on the walls, real pieces from local galleries, not mass-produced prints. Everything in neutral tones, whites and creams and warm woods that let the architecture and the view be the stars of the show. My mother pulled me aside into the kitchen area, her grip on my arm almost painful. Sarah, she hissed, trying to keep her voice low. Please tell me you're renting this. Please tell me you didn't sign some terrible mortgage you can't afford. Please tell me this isn't what I think it is. No mortgage, Mom, I said clearly. I bought it cash. Her face went from pale to absolutely white, all the blood draining away. That's impossible, she said, shaking her head. Sarah, houses like this they cost. She couldn't even say the number. $5.2 million, I said calmly. I know. I wrote the check. She actually swayed on her feet, her knees buckling slightly. My father had to grab her elbow to steady her. He was staring at me like he'd never seen me before, like I was a stranger wearing his daughter's face. Marcus approached me then, leaving Jennifer standing by the windows staring out at the view. My brother's expression was unreadable, something between shock and what might have been respect, and maybe a tiny bit of something that looked like hurt that he hadn't known. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I need to understand what's happening here. How is this possible?" "Dinner will be ready soon," I said, gesturing toward the dining room where I could see the catering staff making final preparations. "Let me give everyone the tour first. Then I'll explain everything." I led them through the house like a real estate agent, narrating as we went, watching their faces. All 6,200 square feet of it, every room designed to impress, every detail chosen with care. The chef's kitchen with its custom Italian cabinetry and a matte gray finish. The La Cornue range in glossy navy blue that cost $40,000 by itself, more than some people spend on a car. The quartz waterfall countertops. The Sub-Zero refrigerator that looks like cabinetry. Uncle Robert, who'd told me I needed a husband with a real job to take care of me, literally had his mouth hanging open, actually gaping like a fish. The home office with floor-to-ceiling built-in shelving in white oak, a custom desk with a view of the canyon. "This is where I do my computer thing," I said pointedly, looking at Uncle Robert, "when I'm not meeting clients at their offices in person, or flying to New York for consultations, or speaking at tech conferences around the world." The primary suite that takes up the entire west wing of the second floor. The bedroom with its own private balcony overlooking the canyon. The walk-in closet that's bigger than my old apartment's bedroom. The spa bathroom with its freestanding soaking tub, the shower with 6 different shower heads and a rain panel, the double vanity with marble countertops. Jennifer kept touching things, running her fingers along the marble, pressing the buttons that controlled the heated floors, like she couldn't quite believe they were real. The infinity pool on the main terrace that seems to spill over the edge into the canyon below. The outdoor kitchen with its built-in grill and pizza oven. The fire pit area with built-in seating and heat lamps for cool evenings. By the time we returned to the living room, my family was dead silent. No one was making jokes anymore. No one was smiling. They just looked stunned, overwhelmed, like they'd been hit over the head with something heavy. "How?" my father finally asked, his voice rough. "Sarah, how is any of this possible? Where did the money come from?" "Let's sit down for dinner," I said, gesturing toward the dining room. "I'll explain everything." The catering staff I'd hired for the evening had set the table in the formal dining room, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides that made you feel like you were floating above the canyon. A live-edge walnut table that seated 20 people easily. Place settings with the custom dinnerware I'd ordered from a ceramicist in Venice Beach, each plate slightly different, handmade, crystal glasses, linen napkins, white roses and eucalyptus as centerpieces. As everyone found their seats, still moving in that stunned slow motion, I remained standing at the head of the table. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady and clear. "Especially after Christmas dinner, which was," I paused, "enlightening." A few people had the grace to look ashamed. Uncle Robert was staring at his plate. My mother's eyes were red like she might cry. "Uncle Robert," I said, looking directly at him. "You asked at Christmas if I still do that computer thing." "Yes, I do. I run a tech consulting business specializing in AI integration and cybersecurity solutions for Fortune 500 companies. This year, my company generated $2.1 million in revenue. After expenses and taxes, I personally netted approximately $850,000. Dead silence. The kind of silence that's so complete you can hear your own heartbeat. You could have heard a pin drop on the hardwood floors. I've been doing this for 6 years. The first year, I made $80,000. The second year, $200,000. By year 3, I crossed $500,000. I've been saving and investing aggressively, living well below my means. I kept living in that modest apartment and driving my old Honda not because I couldn't afford better, but because I was building wealth, not showing it off. I looked at my mother, whose hands were trembling where they rested on the table. "Mom, you called my business a hobby. You worried about my future constantly. This house represents my future and my present. At 29 years old, I'm a self-made millionaire. No trust fund, no inheritance, no help from anyone. Just 6 years of 80-hour weeks, building something from absolutely nothing." My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He just closed it again. The reason I kept driving my Honda and living in that apartment wasn't because I was struggling. It was because I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was focused on building real wealth, not performing success. But after Christmas, after being mocked in front of 18 family members for my supposed failures, I decided maybe it was time to set the record straight. I gestured around the room at the house that surrounded us. So here's the record. This house is 6,200 square feet on half an acre in the Hollywood Hills. I bought it for $5.2 million all cash in October. Architectural Digest is shooting it next week for a feature in their spring issue. Forbes is running a profile on me and my business the same week. And TechCrunch just ranked my company as one of the top 50 emerging tech consultancies in North America. Have you ever had a moment where you completely shocked someone who'd underestimated you? Tell me in the comments what that felt like. And if you want to know what my family said next, how they tried to process what I'd just told them, you absolutely need to be subscribed to this channel because their reactions ranged from genuine apologies to defensive justifications, and one family member's response actually made me question whether I'd done the right thing. For about 30 seconds, nobody said anything at all. They just stared at me like I'd announced I was actually an alien from another planet, like the person they thought they knew had suddenly been replaced by someone completely different. The silence was so complete I could hear the catering staff moving quietly in the kitchen, the soft clink of glasses being arranged, the hum of the refrigerator. Then my Uncle Robert, the same man who just a few weeks earlier had told me in front of 18 people that I needed a husband with a real job to take care of me, let out a nervous laugh. The kind of laugh people make when they don't know what else to do with the discomfort they're feeling. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, shaking his head. "Sarah, I had no idea. This is incredible. Really incredible. You must be so proud." "You had no idea because you never asked," I said calmly, looking directly at him across that beautiful walnut table. "At Christmas dinner, you asked if I still did that computer thing, and you used air quotes and your voice was dripping with mockery. You didn't ask what my business actually does. You didn't ask who my clients are. You didn't ask what my annual revenue was, or what my growth trajectory looked like. You just assumed I was failing. You assumed I was wasting my life. And you felt comfortable mocking me for it in front of the entire family." His smile faded completely. The nervous energy drained from his face and he looked down at his plate, suddenly very interested in the pattern on the china. My mother found her voice then, though it was shaky and small. "Sarah, why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us worry all this time?" "Let you worry?" I turned to her and I could feel years of frustration rising in my chest. "Mom, I tried to tell you. Multiple times. Do you remember last Thanksgiving when I mentioned signing a $200,000 contract? Do you remember what you said?" She blinked at me, tears starting to form in her eyes. "You said, 'That's nice, dear,' and then you immediately changed the subject back to Marcus and his penthouse. You didn't ask a single follow-up question. At Easter, when I told you I was launching a new division of my business, something I'd been working toward for 18 months, Dad told me I had no work-life balance and that I was going to burn myself out. Every single time I tried to share my success with this family, I was dismissed, interrupted, or told I should get a real job. So eventually I stopped trying." My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Sarah, that's not fair," he started to say. "Not fair?" I cut him off and my voice was sharp now. All the anger I'd been holding back for years finally finding its way out. "Dad, you told 18 people at Christmas dinner that I was still figuring things out. You said not everyone can be a high achiever like Marcus. You apologized to the family for my lack of ambition like I was some kind of embarrassment you had to explain away. At my own expense, to save face for yourself, you made excuses for a daughter who didn't need excuses because she was already more successful than you ever knew." The room was dead silent except for the sound of someone's water glass being set down too hard, the crystal making a sharp sound against the wood. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Sarah, I think what they're trying to say is," he began in that diplomatic tone he uses in business meetings. "Marcus, I love you, but you don't get to speak for them right now," I said, turning to look at my older brother. "You've been wonderful, actually. You never mocked me. You never made jokes at my expense. But you also never defended me. When Uncle Robert said I needed a husband to support me, you started to object. I saw you, but then you let him talk over you and you went silent. When Mom called my business a hobby, you stayed quiet. When Dad apologized for my lack of ambition, you said nothing. Your silence was its own kind of statement. Marcus looked down at his plate, his jaw working like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Jennifer, his wife, had the audacity to speak up then. Sarah, I think you're being a bit harsh, she said in that fake sweet voice she uses when she's trying to sound reasonable. We were all just trying to help you. We care about you. Help? I laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. It was sharp and bitter and all the things I'd been holding inside for 6 years. Jennifer, at Christmas dinner, you offered to help me with my resume so I could get a real job at a real company with benefits. You said you had connections in New York. Real companies, you said, with real benefits. Like what I was doing wasn't real. You have no idea what condescension sounds like when you're on the receiving end, do you? Her face flushed red, that blotchy kind of red that spreads down your neck when you're truly embarrassed. I walked over to the sideboard where I'd placed a folder earlier in the evening. I'd hoped I wouldn't need it. I'd hoped that my word and the evidence of the house itself would be enough. But apparently it wasn't. Since we're all here, I said, opening the folder, and since apparently my word isn't enough, I brought documentation. I began pulling out papers, each one a carefully redacted but still damning piece of evidence. These are my tax returns from the last 3 years with personal information redacted. Year 1, $520,000 gross income. Year 2, $680,000. Year 3, $850,000. The numbers speak for themselves. I placed the first set of documents on the table and walked around the room, making eye contact with each family member as I continued. These are client contracts showing the scope and value of my work. This one right here is with a company you've definitely heard of, Uncle Robert. They're on the Fortune 100 list. This contract alone was worth $400,000. I worked on it for 6 months and they were so satisfied they've already signed me for a follow-up project worth even more. I placed each document on the table as I spoke, creating a paper trail of success that they couldn't dismiss or explain away. This is the deed to this house showing the purchase price of $5.2 million and showing that I own it free and clear. No mortgage, no debt, just my name on the title. This is a letter from my wealth management advisor showing my current investment portfolio, total value just over $3 million. This is a speaking invitation from a tech conference in Singapore where they're paying me $50,000 plus expenses to keynote. They're flying me first class and putting me up at the Marina Bay Sands for a week. And this, I held up the final document, is the Architectural Digest contract for the photo shoot next week. They're paying me $15,000 for the feature. Not that I need the money, but it's nice to be recognized. My mother was crying by then, real tears running down her face, her hands trembling where they clutched her napkin. My father had sat back down and his face was gray, all the color drained out of it. "Why are you crying, Mom?" I asked, and my voice was softer now, the anger giving way to something more complicated. Because I succeeded? Or because you missed it? Because you were so busy comparing me to Marcus and finding me wanting that you completely missed what I was actually building? Because we hurt you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Oh, honey, we hurt you so badly and we didn't even know it. We didn't see you. Yes, I agreed quietly. You did hurt me. And no, you didn't see me. But I saw myself. And I built this anyway. My father sat back down heavily in his chair like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. Sarah, I don't know what to say, he said. And for the first time in my life, I heard uncertainty in his voice. I thought you were struggling. You lived in that small apartment and drove that old car, and we thought you needed help. You never said anything different. I told him, my voice firm, repeatedly. You didn't listen. There's a difference. Aunt Susan spoke up then, her voice shaking. Sarah, what can we do? How can we make this right? I looked around the room at all these people who'd diminished me, who'd doubted me, who'd dismissed me as the family disappointment, people I loved, despite everything. People whose approval I'd stopped needing somewhere along the way, but whose respect I still wanted. You can start, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, by understanding that success doesn't look the same for everyone. Marcus's path was Ivy League education, corporate ladder climbing, traditional markers of achievement. That's one valid path. My path was state school on scholarship, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, building something from nothing. That's another equally valid path. Both lead to success. Both have value. But for 6 years, you've treated my path like it was less than his, like I was less than him, like my choices were mistakes instead of deliberate decisions. I never thought that, Marcus said quietly, and I believed him. Sarah, I swear I never thought you were less than me. Maybe you didn't think it consciously, I said, looking at my brother. But you accepted the preferential treatment. You let them put you on a pedestal and me in a metaphorical basement. You benefited from the comparison even if you didn't create it. That's complicity, Marcus, even if it's passive. He had no response to that. None of them did. Here's what's going to change, I continued, and my voice was calm now, certain. From now on, when we have family gatherings, my achievements will be celebrated the same way Marcus's are. Not dismissed, not minimized, not ignored. When I share professional news, people will actually listen and ask follow-up questions instead of immediately pivoting to talk about Marcus. And nobody, and I mean nobody, will ever again suggest that I need to get a real job or that my business is a hobby or that I need a husband to support me. Agreed, my father said immediately, almost desperately. Sarah, you have my word. Things will be different. And if those things don't change, I said calmly, then I'll do what I've been doing for the last 3 months. I'll build my life without you in it. This house, this success, this entire life I've created, I did it without your support or encouragement or belief. I can continue to thrive without your presence. I don't need you to succeed. But I'd prefer to have you in my life if you can treat me with the respect I've earned. My mother let out a sob, a raw, broken sound that made my chest ache. I don't want that, I said, and my voice finally cracked with emotion. I don't want to be estranged from my family. I don't want to cut you out of my life. But I also won't go back to being the family disappointment when I'm actually the family success story. I won't go back to being invisible. Uncle Robert stood up then, pushing his chair back from the table. Sarah, he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. I owe you an apology. A massive one. What I said at Christmas was completely out of line. I made assumptions based on nothing but my own ignorance, and I was dead wrong. I'm deeply sorry. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. That's all I wanted. Acknowledgement, respect, the basic courtesy of not being mocked for choices you don't understand. One by one they apologized, some more sincerely than others. My father's apology was long and rambling and full of justifications, but it ended with genuine remorse. Jennifer's apology was stilted and awkward, clearly forced, but she gave it. My parents both broke down completely, my mother hugging me so tight I thought my ribs might crack, repeating over and over that they were proud of me, that they were sorry, that they loved me. Marcus pulled me aside while the catering staff was serving dessert, a chocolate torte with raspberry coulis that I'd selected specifically because it was Marcus's favorite. He wanted to talk privately. I owe you an apology too, he said quietly. I should have defended you. I should have made them see what I saw, which is that you're brilliant and brave and you took risks I was too scared to take. You bet on yourself and you won. I've always played it safe. Thank you, I said. That means a lot coming from you. Can I ask you something? He said. Why tech consulting? Why that specifically? Because I saw a need in the market and I had the skills to fill it, I said. And because I wanted to build something that was mine, not Dad's vision of what I should be, not what society expected. Mine. Something I created from nothing using just my brain and my work ethic. He nodded slowly. I think I went to Goldman Sachs partly because it was what they wanted, he admitted. I never asked myself what I actually wanted. I just followed the path that was laid out for me. It's not too late to ask that question, I told him. You're 34. You have decades of career left. If you want something different, it's not too late. By the end of the evening, the energy in the house had completely shifted. People were taking actual genuine interest in my work, asking intelligent questions about my business, about AI integration and cybersecurity, about my client base and my growth strategy. They were admiring the house with real appreciation instead of shocked disbelief. They were treating me like an equal, like someone who mattered. As they were leaving, my mother pulled me aside one last time. Sarah, she said, your father and I want to host a dinner next month in Boston to celebrate you properly, the way we should have been celebrating you all along. Will you come? I'll think about it, I said, but we both knew I would go. Have you ever had to prove yourself to people who should have believed in you from the start? Have you ever had to demand the respect you'd already earned? Tell me in the comments how you handled it. And if you want to know what happened after this dinner, how the Architectural Digest feature changed everything, how my story went viral and created opportunities I never imagined, you absolutely need to subscribe right now. Because the next chapter is where my private success became public vindication, and that changed the game completely. 3 weeks after the dinner party, my life exploded in the best possible way. The Architectural Digest feature hit newsstands on February 1st. The headline read, 29-year-old tech entrepreneur's $5.2 million Hollywood Hills home is a masterclass in modern design. The photos were stunning, but it was the article itself that got real attention. Sarah Chen represents a new generation of wealth builders. The article read, while her peers were climbing corporate ladders, she was building her own ladder. At 29, she owns a house many executives twice her age couldn't afford, and she did it without investors, partners, or debt. The article was shared 50,000 times in the first week. My Instagram exploded to 80,000 followers. My business inquiry inbox flooded with over 200 requests. TechCrunch moved my feature to their cover story. Forbes called asking for a follow-up piece about women in tech. But the most surreal moment came when my mother called. Sarah, she said breathlessly, your father and I just watched Good Morning America. They talked about you on national television. They called you the millennial success story of the year. I'd missed it because I was in a meeting with a Fortune 50 company offering a 2-year contract worth $1.8 million. That weekend, I flew back to Boston for the celebration dinner my parents had promised. This time, they'd invited 40 guests, including friends and colleagues who'd been asking about me after seeing the feature. The difference from Christmas was night and day. When I arrived, there was a banner. Congratulations, Sarah, in big gold letters, the same style they'd made for Marcus. My mother cried tears of pride and hugged me tight. My father gave a toast in front of 40 people. To my daughter Sarah, who proved that success comes in many forms. We're proud of the businesswoman you've become, and we're sorry it took us so long to see it. The guests asked intelligent questions about my business, about AI integration, about cybersecurity trends, about being a woman in tech. No more computer thing jokes. No more suggestions to get a real job. Uncle Robert pulled me aside. Sarah, I told that Christmas dinner story to my poker group. I told them how wrong I was. I'm using it as a reminder to never make assumptions. Jennifer approached me later. What I said was rooted in my own insecurities. You bet on yourself. I've spent my whole life following the safe path, and here you are, thriving. Marcus and I talked on the back porch. The Forbes article comes out next week, I told him. They're positioning me as a thought leader in AI consulting. That's incredible, he said. I'm in awe of what you've built. 2 months later, I'm sitting in my home office looking out at the canyon view. My business has grown by 40% since the publicity. I've hired 2 full-time employees and 3 contractors. I'm speaking at 3 major conferences this year. I just signed a book deal about entrepreneurship in tech. My parents call once a week now asking about my business and actually listening. They visited last month and my mother cried when she saw the view. They're trying, and that's more than I expected. The story of my Christmas dinner humiliation has been shared thousands of times. I get messages every day from people who tell me my story gave them courage to pursue their own paths. If you've watched this whole story, thank you. If you've ever been underestimated or told your dreams were unrealistic, I want you to know they were wrong. The people who doubt you often lack the courage to dream as big as you do. Make sure you're subscribed because I'll be sharing more about building a tech business and lessons I've learned. Drop a comment and tell me your story. What are you building that people don't see yet? I read every comment, and I'm cheering for you. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't revenge. It's just finally being seen for who you've always been.